Hey there, and welcome to the first episode of the Open Challenge. I'm Michael, and I'm glad you're here. Before we dive in, I want to be clear about something. This space is not therapy, it's not a debate, it's not anything like we normally put together on this channel. And I'm certainly not here saying that we're going to fix anybody. What we're doing here is just talking, listening, sharing, being honest about mental health in a way that's safe, open, and human. You might hear a story that touches you, or you might hear some stories that don't resonate with you at all, and that's okay. Take what helps, leave the rest. There's no judgment here, no right way, no wrong way. It's just a conversation. Um, Mental health can feel isolating, it can feel heavy, but the simple act of talking about it, of listening to other people, of just showing up makes a difference. The more we do that, the better off we're going to be in the long run. And that's what this show is going to be all about. So once a month, we're going to sit down, we're going to have a conversation, and we're just going to break the silence, just one conversation at a time. So I just want to thank you first, anybody that tunes into this or watches it on VOD. I appreciate you coming in. Thank you for listening. And thank you for taking a small but important step towards opening the dialogue. So let's go ahead and begin. I'm going to introduce our panel here. So first of all, I'm just going to say your name, introduce a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then we'll get to the point of the episode. So CJ, why don't you go first?
Yeah, appreciate it, Michael. Obviously, tonight I'm just CJ. Obviously, if you guys know me from Twitter and X, I'm the EVP. Obviously, I have the EVP show. I cover wrestling content outside of professional wrestling. I am a school teacher. Um, been doing it for quite some time. But yeah, I'm super excited to be here to get away from talking about wrestling and diving into what's really important outside and everyday life, and that's mental health. So thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be the first one of the first guests, and glad to be here.
Appreciate you. Vinny.
Well, I mean, if you know me from, everywhere, my name is Vinny. I generally use Vinny Suds just as my pseudonym um, because I run Suds and Squared Circle Media. I work full time for Whole Foods, and I also podcast. Seems like full time, but um, you know, I've I've dealt with mental health challenges in my own personal life and my significant others, throughout the years. Um, but it's something that's near and dear to my heart, I should say. So I'm happy to be here and happy to talk about something that affects more people than you probably know.
All right. And if you watch any of my other shows, you'll know that we kind of go to the chat very often. I'm gonna have the chat up for these episodes. Feel free to ask your own questions, talk what's going on there. It's not going to be like the hype train like we normally do of like shouting out comments and everything. So please don't feel left out if I don't say hi to you guys while we're talking. But if you have any questions or anything you want to input as far as what we're talking about, then feel free to put those in and I'll shout those out. Real quick before we move on to the main segment of the show to talk about what we're here to talk about today. Why did you guys want to be a part of this? Like, I reached out to everybody. It was a few months ago, just saying that, hey, here's something I'm wanting to start, and kind of gave you guys the rundown of what I wanted to do. What made you guys like immediately jump in and want to be a part of it?
Oh, you can go first, Vinny.
Um, sure. I mean, it's something different. It's something that's not talked about. Coming from being a soap opera fan and a wrestling fan, which are two different genres, you look at the toxicity of the internet, whether it's the IWC or soap Twitter or what have you, and multiple wrestlers and soap stars have left social media because of the fan base, and it goes back to mental health. Um, it's something where, and don't get me wrong, I'm not here to bash on fans. I'm not here to bash on people or whatever. But I think coming from a point of view of the celebrities that we watch on TV are people too, and the anonymity of the internet gives it feels like it gives people the right to say whatever they want without consequences, but the people that are reading the comments are the ones that deal with those consequences in their real life.
For sure. CJ?
For me, man, like I was telling you, when we were backstage, when I found out about this, I was like super excited. I was like, man, I definitely, if I'm not the first guest, I definitely want to be on this show because, outside of being a content creator and obviously, not sort of piggybacking off what Benny said, we know how toxic the IWC is. I went through my own share of problems um, with the IWC, and it gets heavy, man. It gets you to a point where you're like, is this even worth it? That's why I took 2 months away from, X and Facebook and Snapchat and YouTube. Like I fell off the grid. But most importantly, so mental health has been something that's been a part of my life since I was in my early teens. Both my parents, especially my mother, she was manic depressive. So I've grown up in a household where you know therapy has. Uh, I've been doing therapy since I was young, and a lot of I don't want to genderize, but a lot of the male, like me and you were talking about, Michael, like you know we want so a lot of people want to put on this tough guy. I don't really want to talk about my feelings. I was like that for so long. I would keep stuff bottled up. Um, but going through you know two failed marriages. When I got into my mid 20s, after I lost my grandparents, which was the biggest blow I've ever had in my entire life. Um, I just said, look, like, I can't do this anymore. Like, even though I have a small support system with my friends and family, like, therapy is therapy is what I need. And I've been seeing a therapist since I was 22 years old, and I'm 45. So I do it weekly, sometimes twice a week, depending on how much I need it. And I think that if it wasn't for therapy, I don't know where I would be at right now. And it's something that I'm thankful for. Obviously, I just lost my mother in October, because she never. I hate to say this, but she never really indulged in what therapy really was bringing to her. So, like the sicknesses that she had, she talked about it, but she never like worked the steps, and that was something that me and her would butt heads about all the time. It's like, okay, well, you're spending all this money to go to therapy, but you're not working the program and the steps that your therapist is recommending. And for me, you know, as I said, going through two failed marriages, like therapy saved my life. And it's definitely it's got me to where I'm at now. And without it, I would be lost. I'm just gonna be honest with you.
Yeah, that's true. And I didn't know about your mom. Sorry to hear about that, man.
October 20th.
That's always a rough thing. Like it's something as an eventuality. Like parents are made to not outlast their children, and so we all know it's going to come eventually. And when it comes, we're never ready for it. I appreciate you guys talking about that. So with this first episode, we're going to be talking openly about mental health. There's no right or wrong answer. You can feel free to share as much or as little as you want. Um, it's okay if you just want to back out and listen to whatever topic we're talking about. Um, when was the first time you realized mental health was something that affected you personally? Like when you needed to change the way you thought?
You want me to start, Bernier, or you want to start?
Doesn't matter to me. I mean, I
You
can
can
go first. I can,
go ahead.
sure. So, I mean, I was in therapy when I was younger. My parents got divorced when I was 10 years old, 9 or 10 years old, and it was rough on me. And you know, one of the things that I always carried with me was um, the way my father loved us. He was an old school Italian. He was a single child, an only child. His grandparents raised him. He was doted on, and he was spoiled. When he became a father, he didn't know how to become a father, and how to be a provider for a family. My mother was actually his second wife, and which I didn't find out about till later. He had a failed marriage after a month, and they got annulled, and then he met my mom, and so on and so forth. And then 10 weeks after the divorce was finalized, he got married to his third wife, and you know, my sister and I were introduced to our stepmother 6 weeks after the divorce, and he's like, you can call her mom if you want to. And he just never really understood that, we had a mom, and we never felt close to her. Um, so, mental health, one of the biggest things for me is that I know that there are triggers for me that end up causing me to act out. Um, I know that I'm undiagnosed as autistic. Um, and forgive me for not being PC, but I feel like it's Asperger's, you know, high functioning autism spectrum, whatever the PC term is right now. But I mean, I'm educated, I'm in a good job, I'm a go getter, but I also know that there are times where I can relate to Sheldon from Big Bang Theory because of I take things very literally at times. It's hard for me to sense sarcasm, and so it um, and I'm finding all this stuff out about myself in my 40s. If it was something that I had, you know, being diagnosed as, when I was younger, maybe I would understand my brain a little better. Um, but I don't see a therapist every week. I see a dietitian, which is almost like a therapist, but more for weight weight challenges that I've always had. But we do talk about other stuff besides just nutrition. We talk about what's going on in my life. Um, but ultimately, I know that there are things that trigger me to act out impulsively, and and while they're not illegal, they're still not healthy. Um, and you know, the between journaling, which I have to use guided journals because I can't just sit down and write. I have to have a prompt. But between journaling and even podcasting, it helps me it helps me to um, get out of that headspace that I feel like I maybe wanting to do something impulsively.
What about you, CJ? What made you realize that mental health was something that affected you?
So this might be a little long-winded. I'll try to get it in as quick as possible. I don't want to take up the whole show on one segment. But for me, like I said, so a little bit about myself. Obviously, growing up, my parents divorced when I was 4. So from there on out, I moved in. I stayed with my mother. I never really got that strong relationship that a lot of people get to have with you know a building block and a foundation of having that mother and that father. Not that they didn't care about me, because obviously they both do, um, but I never was able to establish that relationship and get that parental guidance that I needed from my mother and father growing up. Even with the separation and the divorce, like they were always fighting. Like my mom would try to keep me away, keep my dad from from seeing me. So growing up, that was tough. Like I mentioned, prior, when I was about 14, 15 years old, I moved in with my grandparents. God rest their soul. But which this is kind of embarrassing, but they spoiled the hell out of me. I got things that I was, I don't have, siblings and all that. So like, they got stuff that they got me stuff that I never imagined that I would be able to get. My first vehicle, they helped me, get my high school class ring and go to all the dances and throw me my birthday party. So like, they pretty much raised me. And I always said, growing up, like, I don't want to be a father like my father is. Um, so, when my grandmother passed away in her sleep unexpectedly, like I said, I played sports all through high school, had a college scholarship to play baseball in North Carolina. I was a three-sport athlete in high school, playing varsity in my freshman year, lettered in every sport. Finished fourth in valedictorian in high school, college degree. I've been fairly successful, but where I hit a crossroads at is I was so underweight and I just could not figure out why. So I went to a doctor. The doctor said, "Look, like, your mother, like, all this stuff runs in your genes. Like, your mother's like manic depressive. So like, I was diagnosed with severe anxiety, panic attack disorder. I was about 145 pounds in my late 20s to my early 30s. When I first like started deep diving into therapy, and I found some medication that worked. And I've been taking it, ever since. And within the first year or 2 years, I had put on 40 to 50 pounds, and people were like, "Oh my God, like, are you okay?" Like, but when I went in, the doctor said, "You are deathly underweight." And now, like, being 6'4", I'm supposed to weigh 225, something like that. That's somewhere around that in that range. I'm around 230. Um, but like I said in the previous speech, being married twice, having children, you know, both of my ex-wives, there was infidelity in the marriage. I'm not gonna, go into the whole specifics of that. But it didn't work out. So I'm like, am I following in my parents' footsteps? Like, I haven't had this relationship with my father, my entire life. My mother, even though like I had a relationship with her, I had to watch her go from rehab to rehab to rehab to rehab to rehab. And truth be told, that's why she did not live as long as most people are living nowadays, because of her choices in her past. So like, she developed dementia in her 50s, and she passed away October 20th. But the number one thing, man, and like I said, I've been on medication for anxiety, depression, panic attack disorder. But this is something that I know, Michael, and there's probably only about three other people in the whole community knows this. Um, but just recently, in 2023, I uprooted my whole entire life, and moved up north, to the state of Delaware for a relationship, which, being coming from, two failed marriages and like just not really knowing what true love is, because I still truly have never felt what it's like for a person to truly love me like unconditionally without the infidelity and all that. I moved to the state of Delaware, which was a huge mistake, obviously. Um, we were together for 2 years, and I tore four ligaments in my right ankle up here. It was a whole year, almost a year and a half of recovery, and I could not get back home. Um, so this is super embarrassing, and I can't believe I'm even going to say this live. Um, but for the first time in 44 plus years, I had no support system, and I was homeless. In a state where I absolutely I didn't know a soul besides her, and we broke up. We was not on great terms at all. I slept in my truck for about 4 months, um, and it was. I don't wish it on anybody, man. I don't know how the people that have to live this this life that lifestyle every single day. I always was like, man, hopefully that's never me. But until you live it and you sleep in your own truck, you don't know how you're going to get your next meal. You don't have any money coming in. It's just mental health without my therapist. I had to ramp up my therapy during this time to 3 times a week, man. It was a lot. And like I said, Michael, me and you had a brief conversation about it, before one of my streams. A couple other people in the community know, but you know, I think for me that you know at 45 years old as I am now, like it was the biggest wake up call I've had my entire life. Like I literally had no one, no money, no income, and no way of getting back home to my family and my support system. And it's the worst feeling in the world. Absolutely.
Man, that's thank you for sharing that. Yeah, you and I had talked about that on some previous just behind the scenes stuff, and um, I'm sorry you had to go through that. That's insane. Um, but I mean, I guess it's only fair if I answer the question too, right? Like I can't come in here and tout everybody's share and then I don't. Probably the first time that hit for me is when I lost my mom. So at the time, I was going through a separation. I had 2 kids. One of them being a baby that was with me at the time. I moved back in with my parents, and I get woken up kind of in the middle of the night that my mom isn't breathing, and this person has been my best friend since I could remember. Which I'm sure at some point during these episodes I'll talk more about that relationship with them, because they were actually my grandparents who adopted me, um, because I needed a family. I needed a mom and dad. Uh, but My first phone call was to my ex-wife, to say, "Hey, I need you to come get Chad because mom's not gonna be able to watch him." And she's like, "Why?" I was like, "Well, because they're working on her right now in the hallway. Like they're doing compressions. She's probably gonna end up going to the hospital. She woke up and she wasn't breathing, so I need you to come get him so you can watch him and I can go to work." And her making it click in my brain on that phone call of like, you just said you're going to go to work and your mom's dead in the hallway. That clicked on me that there was something wrong in my head, that I shouldn't be thinking that way. Like, why am I thinking that it's more important for me to go to work, make a dollar, than it is to be here with my dad, be here for my mom if she wakes up, or even if she doesn't? Why did that make that decision of, I need you to come get him so I can go make a buck? Which then made me dive into the conversation that we all have as guys, I assume, when we're, or at least most of us, of like, you're the provider, you're the one that's always got to be strong, you got to be the rock, you always have to be the one that keeps things level. And at that point, I realized something's wrong, and I need to take care of that, and change that somehow in my body. So that started my journey to try to change my mental health. Unfortunately, without the funds, I didn't have therapy. But just doing the research though of reading the books and reading the information of like, where should you be thinking about, how should you handle situations, who are you as a person, and also looking at therapy that I've had for family members, of seeing like, Vinny, you mentioned being undiagnosed as autistic. At I was 32 at the time, I think, and I asked a psychiatrist that was working for with a family member of mine of like, hey, if I was to ask to get tested as autistic, because like I'm looking at these checklists that I'm seeing them check out, and I'm like, that was me, and that was me, and that was me, and that was me.
Hmm.
What does it mean to get certified for it? And he's like, well, here's what I'm going to ask you. Do you have a job? Yeah. And you have a family? Yeah. Do you feel like you can function through the day? Yeah. He's like, then it doesn't really mean anything for you because you've already done the work to get yourself functioning, which is what all of this is for. You get diagnosed to get the medications, to get the therapies, to get all that to work, to hopefully eventually not need that. So if you're already working without it, then
And I
you're
understand,
okay.
and I understand what you're saying completely because I'm the same way. I've done that work. I've gone to school. I've worked, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
No, no,
but
no, you're fine.
um,
This should be a
my
conversation, so jump in if
yeah,
you feel like it.
like my thing is, and the reason why I say undiagnosed is because I'm not planning on getting tested because I'm kind of in the same boat. I've been there, I've done that. I look at my life, and while there are challenges, I believe I'm successful. I have a wonderful wife who I love. I have a son who, we've had a great bond through a lot of challenges throughout, his life, and and I, I've, I'm finally getting to the point where I feel like I have a great job. But for the longest time, I felt like I was self sabotaging myself. Like I felt like there was a glass ceiling in many aspects of my life, whether it's personal, professional, spiritual, financial. Like there felt like there was a glass ceiling that I just couldn't get through. Um, like there was a stopping point where you know I just felt like I couldn't go any further. Like,
Yeah,
why is it that when I'm in a relationship with a woman that I care about, that I love a lot, why am I doing something stupid like that I feel is innocent, chatting with somebody who nothing sexual or anything, but it was still inappropriate. And, granted, that woman and I, she's my best friend. And our relationship evolved to the point where now she's my best friend. She was actually the best woman at my wedding. Um, so that worked out. But it's like when we're in the relationship, why am I doing something that is looked at as inappropriate when I'm feeling happy, when
yeah,
I'm feeling like I'm in control? Um, so I understand the idea that, I've got a family, I've got a job, I've got this, and I've done the work, but it's still like, it feels like there's that glass ceiling. Why can't I get past this to feel successful?
yeah. To feel happy.
Yeah.
And I get you on that. Like I've done a lot of thinking and talking about my dad, and in hindsight, the things he taught me. And I feel like the things he taught me caused me to fail a lot in my life. For some of the same reasons, because like I look back in the history and I see him flirting, like obviously flirting with other women while he's married to my mom, and like I'm like, why did he do that? But him doing that made me think, well, that's how you should, like, that's fine. He did it and they stayed married for 50, 55 some odd years. So obviously that's fine. So then I do that and then I cause problems in my relationships getting older because I think it's okay because that's what I was taught and um, that's what I thought would be okay. Um, kind of on that same topic, uh, guys, tell me why you think that vulnerability, like, because that's one of the things we're taught, obviously, as at a young age as guys, is vulnerability is a weakness. It's not something you should show people, not something you should talk about. Why do you think that was such seen as such a weakness?
I'll let you go, Vinny.
All right. I mean, I can't talk back in the day why why being vulnerable was seen as such a weakness because I grew up after the divorce. I grew up with my mother and my sister, and it was always instilled in me to talk about myself. I'm a very sensitive person, even with the rough exterior. Um, but at this point now in society, I feel like I honestly feel at times less vulnerable and more closed off because I never know when somebody's going to use something against me. With this whole cancel culture, you know, which is so freaking ridiculous. But somebody grasps onto something, whether it's in your past or a tweet you put out 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and all of a sudden you're shunned. People are doxing you. People are, making up fake stuff on you because they don't like something that you did that you may have rehabilitated yourself from or, grew from. Um, and there are still things that I won't share publicly. I'll share with people who I feel close enough to, but I won't share publicly because of that situation. I just don't trust the public. Um, and I, so I don't think it's necessarily, the vulnerability that's the scary part as a man. I think it's just in society, vulnerability is a scary thing.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point too, and I'm sure that'll be a topic on one of these episodes someday of like the growth that someone can have, and kind of the idea of where we are as a society today of saying that people can grow and people can change, but then the the larger audience or the larger selective people, or at least the louder. I don't want to say
Right.
I don't want to say larger. The
It's the
louder
vocal
portion,
minority.
yeah,
Yeah.
they do like to say, well, no, they can't change. They said this and they did this back when they were younger, and that's who they are. Well, no, that's who they were, and
Yep.
we can grow and we can change and we can become different people. CJ, how about you? Why do you think it was such a
Uh,
weakness back then?
I think it was a weakness, specifically for me because like my father, he grew up with, he grew up in a rough upbringing. Obviously he has I have a huge family on his side. He's got 7 sisters, 4 brothers. Um, they my grandfather was a drill sergeant in the military, so very like super strict. Um, you know, and my dad just kind of followed the core of my grandfather to where it's like, you know, and when I would talk to my dad and be like, hey, like, you know, there's things that's bothering me. My dad's like, well, there, I know your mother goes to therapy and all this, but like that's not the answer for everybody. Like you don't have to. Sometimes you just have to suck it up. Like it's life. Um, so that was instilled in me, because I did finally build that relationship back with my father when I was 16, and he was so hard on me about, wanting to get out there and, talk to a therapist or, become a part of a group that meets on Wednesday nights that talks about their problems. He made me feel like that was weak. And that's just the way he was raised. Just being someone that grew up from a strict household where nobody really talked about their problems. And I think that's very important in the upcoming society for the kids that are growing up now. Like it's the parents' job to make sure that they know that like they're going to be that support system for them, growing up, and it's okay to be able to share your problems, because you know you definitely don't want to keep them bottled up inside of you. Like I think society, going back from the '80s when I was born, when I grew up to now, it's completely different. There's so many people now that do therapy and stuff like that, but growing up in the '90s, I graduated high school in '98. Therapy just wasn't really a big thing. Everybody just kind of kept everything in, and stress is one of the number one killers. So like it's so important to be able to open up, whether it's to your best friend, if you have a best female friend, or to go the ultimate route like I did and hire a professional that I can speak to weekly, um, and not only have that support system from the family and the friends, but then I can get on this computer screen and I can talk to my therapist about absolutely anything that I want to talk about for that hour and not be judged. And I think that's very important in today's society.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like why I always thought it was a weakness is when I was younger, I was obviously a different type of cat than what my dad expected. My dad was a machinist, worked a lathe for got 43 years before he was forced to retire. Um, and everything was rub some dirt on it. Everything was it'll be okay. Everything was just deal with it and move on. Um, but he never really kind of gave me the I don't know. I don't want to say like the attaboys because that's something that I don't particularly look for even nowadays. But um, I instead of choosing a sport, I wrestled in high school. Um, that was the only sport I really kind of dug, and even then I didn't really like it. It was just I liked professional wrestling, and in my brain, it 1-1. Let's do both. Why not? And so I did that, but I preferred the arts. Like I did choir, and I did orchestra, and I did band, and I was in marching band, and I took all the music courses, and I took all the drama courses, and I played Kaniki in Greece in high school, and I played both Phantom and Roll, both in Phantom, which was really fun running around the damn stage trying to figure that out because we didn't have any other guys that wanted to be in it. But the the idea that I wasn't that tough guy. I wasn't the man's man that my dad expected me to be, and so I got a lot of backlash from him because of that. I was never the guy he wanted me to be,
I
and
wish
so
I had done that kind of stuff in high school. Like I played baseball. Um, I, it was always instilled in me as a man's thing to do was sports.
yeah,
Um, and the stigma surrounding the drama, the arts, the theater program is that the only people who do that are girls and gay guys. And and I'm not, and trust me, there's nothing wrong with being gay because my son is gay. I'm fully supportive of the LGBTQ plus community because of that.
hmm
Um, I wish I hadn't had such a big ego back then, thinking that, oh, I'm going to be looked at differently if I want to do that. I grew up, as a wrestling fan myself, and you know, I always thought, oh yeah, it's more sport than drama. But getting into soap operas, it's more drama than sport.
yeah,
So um,
it's a
it's
soap opera for men. That's
it is
something that's been
exactly.
said for years.
Um, I wish I had done all that, because I watched my son through high school, and my son did marching band, my son did the drama club, and it's like I was living vicariously through him.
hmm
And I'm so proud of the man that he's becoming. He's 20 years old now, and he's working a lot. He didn't he tried to go straight through college like I did, but it wasn't for him, so he's trying to work back to it. Um, but he also knows that I'm always there for him. And that's the kind of relationship that I never had with my father.
Yeah,
I felt like my dad was, had always chosen which child, whether me and my sister, was his favorite at that point in time for whatever reason. Um, although I will say, when my dad passed away, it's coming up to a year now, and it took me a while to get to the grieving part because he had dementia towards the end of his life. He didn't want to give up his freedom, although he was in, hospitals for a while, whether it be forced on him or whatever. Um, and I have his ashes here in my house because nobody else wanted them. My sister and I are planning on doing something when we get the money, but get the money to put his ashes into the mausoleum with his parents. Um, but it took me a long time to actually grieve. I do miss him because he was my father, and I love him as who he was and where he was at.
yeah,
Um, but I've always strived to have a better relationship with my son because of the lack of relationship I had with my dad.
yeah. Very, very much. I can understand that. and I don't know about you, but I think we can kind of connect a little bit on this. So with my mom, when she passed away, it was about 6 months before I finally I had a breakdown. Like it hit me one day. I even forget what it was. Someone said one thing, and it was just like I was crying the rest of the day.
Hmm.
And it was because I felt like I had to hold it together for everybody else. Let everybody else have their moment to grieve, and then I could let it go. And so at the moment that hit, my brain just clicked and went like, "All right, everybody's dealt with it. Now you gotta." And then it just flowed out. Um, it
Yeah, when I was talking to my dietitian, like I said, it's like a therapist, but obviously you get bereavement time off work and whatever, and I told her at the time, I said, they said take as much time as you need. My job is great at that. Take as much time as you need, whatever. And I told my dietitian, I'm like, honestly, if I don't go to work and I take bereavement time, it feels wrong because I wasn't taking it to grieve him. We weren't doing a funeral. We weren't doing any services or whatever. I told her it would have been just me sitting home playing video games because I want to play video games.
mhm,
She's like, take the time because eventually you will want to. And it did. It hit me around the holidays. It hit me around Thanksgiving and Christmas. I get a lot of my cooking from my dad. So when it came to, Christmas Eve and I'm like, oh, I want to try something different. I'm like, "Yeah, well, that was what he would do."
yeah.
Um, and so I definitely understand that. And it hit me a long time after he passed.
Yeah, it can hit at weird times and for weird things. This one didn't hit me as hard, but so my uncle would, like I said, I was adopted by my grandparents, so for the first 12 years of my life he was my brother, but after that I realized who he was. He just passed away a couple of days ago, and I haven't talked to him in, God, 15 years. And so it didn't affect me. It didn't really hit me. I called my mother up and it was just like, hey, just so you know, Alan passed. And if you need me, obviously I'll be there for you. But like, I'm not gonna go to any of the service or any of that. Like, just if you want me to go, I'll go with you. Um, well, we pulled up today and they finally wrote the not the bereavement,
Obituary.
obituary. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just reading in it, he is survived by his brother Michael, which he has never acknowledged, not once, since me and him have ever known each other.
Hmm.
And seeing that on there and knowing that someone that was close to him still felt comfortable enough to put me on that spot in that obituary, like I started to tear up there in the kitchen today, just thinking about that. Cause I'm like, oh my God, like at least a little part of him somewhere still felt that connection to me. And we've had a very rocky and rough life together. But there's a few moments that stick out in my brain, and those moments are the ones that hit. And I'm like, oh my God, like that sucks that he's gone now. Now that we can't talk about those things. Um, Speaking of conversations, this will be the last question for the show. If you could go back and tell the younger self that needed the help back then, if you could tell them just one thing to help them start that conversation earlier or start that path earlier, what would it be? What would you want to tell yourself?
CJ, if you want to take this one first, you can go ahead.
Okay, just touching a little bit on what you guys were talking about. There's people like in here while I'm trying to do the stream. Sorry about the
That's
excess
fine.
noise, but I put my mic on mute. When I'm not talking, but so I was listening to what you guys were saying, and obviously going back to me moving up north and becoming homeless and sleeping out of my truck and not knowing where I'm going to eat, sleep, where I'm going to go take a shower, which I know it sounds absolutely disgusting, but that's just the truth of someone that's homeless. Um, my mother passed away in October, and here we are in, almost the end of February or beginning of March. And because I had all of that going on top of my injury, on top of, the IWC, you know, calling the school board and calling me all these just crazy stuff, just outlandish stuff online, harassing my kids in their DMs. I ended up getting my teacher's license revoked over all these heinous comments that were made online. Um, I was not, I have not even began to grieve my own mother's death, and she passed away in October. Obviously, it hit me hard, around Thanksgiving and Christmas, like Benny was talking about. Um, but because I've had so much other stuff going on mentally, I haven't even taken the time to like. She used to just blow my cell phone up, and I'm thinking to myself, I used to never answer those calls because I knew she wasn't in her right mind. Like with the dementia, she didn't know who I was half the time. And I think to myself every day, like, I wish I would have answered those calls. Or, I did get to tell her bye before, she passed away in Louisiana. I was in Delaware. Um, so, like, I was able to get back for their funeral. Unfortunately, for a lot of friends and family and stuff that helped me get there. Um, but it's never the same of actually being there to tell your own mother goodbye. So, you know, but touching on what you're talking about, like if I had something to tell my younger self is like I grew up, similar to what you guys are talking about, rough. Like I was outdoorsy, played sports, hunting, fishing, like grew up in the South, like just rub some dirt on it. My dad used to say that all the time. It's okay. It's completely okay to have feelings. It's not designed for just uh, a female. It's the whole. It's everybody. Everybody has their own feelings, and it's okay to talk about them. And if you don't talk about them, sometimes over the years it's gonna build up, and that's why you see stuff that people do, like having to get checked into a mental institution, or completely losing their mind, or you know you've seen all the documentaries that I've seen, and a lot of that deals with the mental disorders and not being able to figure your problems out. Like it took over a year and a half from me switching from psychiatrist to psychiatrist to figure out what exactly the problem is. So if I had one big thing to tell my younger self is don't be afraid to speak out about yourself, to speak out about your feelings, because at the end of the day your feelings are valid, and the longer you hold them in, the worse it's going to be for you. You have to be able to express yourself, and it doesn't matter how tough you are, what kind of work you do, what your parents tell you. If you got to be able to release those feelings, because if not, you are going to have a long life and long road ahead of you.
Very good. Benny?
I think the one piece of advice that I would tell my younger self is not to worry what other people think about you. Um, it goes deeper than feelings, but more along the lines of if you're passionate about something, show it, do it. It's funny because I look back and under class superlatives when I graduated high school, I was named as class individualist. So I was always somebody that, marched to the beat of their own drummer anyways. But it was also, you know, if I wanted to do, the arts, if I wanted to do productions or drama class, not to worry about any stigmas that may be attached to it. And focus on what I truly wanted, not chasing the I'm proud of you for my father, not chasing the, you know, oh, I want to be popular, I want to have a lot of friends, um, you know, and not be a people pleaser. You know, unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff that goes on that you're taught that you have to conform to one side or another, or conform to you have to like this or else, instead of just being able to think on your own. And I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice. Um, I do want to mention that um, I love the concept of this show. I listen to Maurice Bedard, who plays Sonny Corinthos on General Hospital. He has a podcast called State of Mind, and because he suffers from bipolar disorder and whatever, it's a fantastic podcast. Um, for anybody that may want to listen to it, AJ Lee actually was on an episode of it back in 2023. Um, but that podcast has helped me to be able to open up about my own feelings too and my own mental health challenges. So I just kind of wanted to put it out there that I'm loving what we're doing here.
I appreciate that. Like I take that more as the topic rather than my quote unquote creation, but
Yeah,
um, it is something that I think is massively important. So I appreciate hearing that you're loving the idea of this particular type of thing. I am going to turn it over to the audience, though. Obviously, if you're watching us live right now, if you're going to watch it on VOD, let me know what kind of topics. So, obviously, the topic this week was just getting the conversation started and why that's so hard. But if there's any topics you feel like you want to specifically be talked about on the show, let me know and we will do it. This is going to be a monthly thing, so I can't wait to see more of what's going there. Um, and get to know more about the people that I get to talk to on a daily basis. Like you two were both from the Gimmick Table Media Group. Excuse me, my dyslexia decided to go away from there. With me, and we talk a lot anyway. But it's still good to know more stuff about each other. Like to get a little bit more in each other's lives. I will answer the question myself. I just realized I hadn't even answered it. I would go back to probably my high school self. And kind of similar to Vinny's, I would stop focusing so much on the things I didn't have and realize the things I did. I had a very small, very close knit of friends that, in hindsight, I did not spend nearly enough time with. I did not focus enough on that I should have been more there for them than I was. And it's because I was too worried about what I felt I deserved, which was not the mentality I should have had. I should have been more thankful for the people I had in my life at the time, including my parents, despite the deficiencies we had in our relationship. Um, all right. Well, before I get to the closing of this, um, let's go ahead and just tell us where we can find you guys. CJ, where can everybody find you?
Yeah. Once again, thank you, Michael, for bringing me on. This is when I saw the idea, like Benny said, like it's something that I feel is important. Obviously, anytime that I can come on a podcast to talk about mental health, sign me up. I will jump on a mental health podcast before I jump on a wrestling podcast because it's just that important to me and my life, to my kids' life, and to everybody else. I feel like, you know, if I can reach out to one person with the story that I told today, then I feel like I've done something. This isn't for my own personal satisfaction, but if there's somebody that can resonate or just grab onto my story and go with it, then I'm super happy for that and super happy for you for having me on. I mean, I appreciate it. As far as where you can find me, where can't you find me? So on X, obviously you can find me at EVPCJP. Instagram, same handle, EVPCJP. TikTok, it's at Brady the Goat 21. And of course, obviously, we all know each other from the wrestling podcast industry. I'm affiliated with Gimmick Table Media as well as DWE. You can find me on my YouTube channel, and it's at the EVP Show. I hardly stream according to Michael. But I think I might try to pick up a couple more shows. But no, I stream about 5 times a week. It's a great tool that my therapist has told me that because I can, for that hour and a half I can block out everything that's outside of my personal life, and I can talk about something that I love, and that's professional wrestling. Yeah, please hit that like and subscribe button to the EVP show. I'm on about 5 times a week. And I've had both of these lovely gentlemen on as well. So thank you again, Michael. And anytime you need me to come on, I'd be glad to come back. So I've had a blast. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We actually got before we get to where we can find you, Vinny. I do want to say we did have a suggestion in here, and CJ, I think it'd probably be a good topic to bring you back on. So obviously, I would definitely reach out to you for that in the future. Vinny, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter and or X and Facebook at Vinny Suds. At Suds Media is the network X account, which is what I normally use. I don't always switch back and forth. Um, on There's also Suds and Squared Circle Media on Facebook. Follow both myself and my network. Um, on Instagram and Threads is at Suds and Squared Circle. And then TikTok and Twitch is at suds_media. But for everything, suds-media.com brings you to our YouTube channel. Again, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Help us out. Help us grow.
Very, very good. Well, I appreciate you guys being here. I'm going to go ahead and do the closing for this. I'm going to go to a one shot. If you guys want to hang around, we can talk a little after it. Then that's fine. If you got to go, I completely understand. But we'll go ahead and just go to a oneer and close out the show. Well, remember, you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to have the right words. You don't even have to relate to everything that you heard today. What matters is that you showed up to listen, that you allowed yourself to witness these stories, these conversations. That in itself is meaningful. That matters. Having someone there to listen to your story is a lot of times the release that we need. If anything we talked about today resonated with you, reach out. Reach out to friends, reach out to family, reach out to a therapist, reach out to a professional, a non professional. Hell, reach out to me in the DMs and I'll talk to you too. Take a moment to check in on yourself. Make sure you understand that sometimes yourself needs to be important. And if you're struggling, please know that there are people that are ready to help, even if you feel like they're not. They are there. You are not alone in this. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for choosing to participate in breaking the silence around mental health. For the Open Challenge, we will see you next time. Look for the notifications of what day next month we will have an episode, what the topic will be. In the meantime, take care of yourself and take care of each other. Bye, everybody.